We've got Black Friday football this weekend. Miami Dolphins, New York Jets continue what's already been a pretty fun weekend of football, and we haven't even reached the main part coming Sunday. All of that coming up on this Friday episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside to this Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. I'm David Harrison on Twitter and on Threads at dharrison82, host of Locked On Commanders, host of Locked On Bucks, credential member of the media covering both of those teams for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation group of sites. And he is Tony Wiggins on Twitter at Shop Talk Wig. That's 2 G's on the end there. Host of Locked On Jags with over 10 years of experience covering Jacksonville's finest football team. Locked On NFL is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, everydayers, we appreciate your continued support for the program and the network. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. On today's episode, we're going to predict the rest of Week 12's NFL schedule, and we're going to talk about what went down on Thanksgiving. But first, Black Friday football is a thing now, Tony. We got the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets kicking off at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's 7-3 Dolphins, 4-6 New York Jets. But the interesting thing here, Tony, right off the bat, division rivals. It's in New York, so that always is kind of a wild card. It's Friday, so that's interesting. But what's more interesting to me, last year, the New York Jets and Miami Dolphins split this series between the two of them 1-1, and the New York Jets had a scoring differential over plus 20 against this Miami Dolphins team. So here's my question to you. First and foremost, before we even make any predictions, does last year really matter, or are these two teams so different 12 months later, maybe not even a full 12 months, but basically 12 months later, that you almost have to throw the past, even the recent past, out the window?
I think the second one, you have to throw it out of the window. And the reason why is because even though the Jets had quarterback problems last year, they really got quarterback problems right now. And Miami is a better offensive team. And Miami's also improved their defense with the addition of Jalen Ramsey. You know, if you can't throw against regular teams, you ain't throwing against Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. That's not going to be something that you can look forward to. Here's what's interesting about the game, though. Two things could happen. You say it starts at 3, it could be 3:15 and the game will be over because Miami scores so quickly. Or the best part of the Jets team is their defense. And you could have a really, really good defense going up against a really, really good offense on one side, and then a bad offense going against a good defense, and Miami eventually just pulls away. I'm sort of stuck in the middle between them both, but I do think it'll be competitive for a while because of the defense. But I don't think, come the third quarter that we're going to be sitting here on pins and needles worried about the game because Miami is so explosive offensively. They're a team that if they get to 24 against the Jets who can't score very much, then the game is probably over. And Miami can actually get to 40. But 24, give me 24. If I'm the Dolphins defense, I say give us 24 points and the game's over.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. You can talk about guys getting to 40. I witnessed the team get to 40.
I saw it
on Thursday night. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But we got to talk about probably the biggest story coming in this game for the New York Jets. Like you mentioned, that terrible quarterback situation. I mean, they brought in Zach Wilson as an organization, and there was some belief, whether it was warranted or not, that he was going to be this like franchise savior and finally be the quarterback to turn it all around and all that stuff. Obviously, that didn't work out so well. So they brought in Aaron Rodgers, but I do have to kind of tip my cap to them a little bit because they did bring in the veteran. They brought in the legend, and so it's always easier when you're getting replaced by a legend. But they kept him. You know what I mean? A lot of people, I think, expected him to trade him, release him outright, whatever. But they kept him, and they stood by this mantra of, he just needs a reset. He just needs to restart. Well, that reset didn't last very long. Aaron Rodgers out before you know it. Maybe, we might have an over-under on whether this game is over faster in this week than Aaron Rodgers' game was over in that week. That might be something that's interesting to talk about. But now they turn to Tim Boyle, who is playing for his fourth NFL franchise since 2019. And while a lot of people probably haven't heard of him, this isn't his first rodeo. He's played 18 NFL games. He's got 3 starts. So this is going to be his 4th start. He is 0-3 as a starter for those who do think that quarterback wins are quarterback stats. Look, nothing super impressive, 60% career completion rates, 3 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions. I mean, he came out on the field for the Jets last week and threw an interception lickety split. So, the expectations aren't very high. So my question about the Jets, when you look at this quarterback situation, Wig, how do they keep a guy like Garrett Wilson from just completely coming undone this season? Because he has already been frustrated. Like, if you look at New York Jets press conferences, his locker room sessions, he's not to, doing crunches in the driveway levels of mental breakdown here, but he is not happy and he is not being fed. And, he knows that he's got more talent that he's being able to display. What from a football, analyst standpoint, when you got a situation where you got some weapons, Alan Lazard is out there, Garrett Wilson, like I just mentioned, you got a guy like Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook hasn't done much, but he's still a guy or whatever. What would you say, just from a general football standpoint, like what's the best approach to get these guys the ball and try to make something happen?
Try to get it out quickly and see if they can run after the catch. Do some things like that. Just screen, bubble screens. I don't care. Look, I saw a team that can throw the ball tonight in San Francisco. They can actually throw the ball down the field, and they get the ball out quickly. And they get the ball to their dynamic players like Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey in a short area where it doesn't take a whole bunch of football execution from the quarterback. So that's what they have to do. I would give them a heavy dose of Breece Hall. Give them a heavy dose of Breece Hall. Take field goals when you can. I know there's this thing that when you play explosive teams, you need to score touchdowns. I get it. The bottom line is you need to score points. You don't want to come away empty. We saw a team come away empty today earlier in Detroit. And it usually comes back to bite you. So that's what they could do. But look, this is what I tell Jets and Jets fans. And I hear a lot of people on TV talk about this all the time. It's not like they haven't tried, okay? A couple of years back, they used the number 2 overall pick on Zach Wilson, right? It didn't work so far. And it shows signs that it'll never work because it's not like a Geno Smith situation or it's not like a Jordan Love, who was fabulous today. And I know we'll talk about that later. But coaches have to be patient and develop players, and they have to give it a shot. So while he was not playing well, and they went out and got a first ballot Hall of Famer, probably one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks I've ever seen, and he tore his Achilles. And what I would do is I would go to Garrett Wilson and say, man, we tried. There are a lot of people saying this is what they get for doing that. Doing what? Using the number 2 overall pick 3 years ago on the Cat? Or bringing in a first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers? What did they do? He got hurt. Yeah. I mean, how many times can you allocate funds to that position or resources to that position when a guy couldn't play? Then you go get a guy who can play. He got hurt. There's only so much you can do. I mean, they was talking that they need to go sign Tom Brady. That's not practical. You think Tom Brady's going to come in there and play for less than $20 million? It's just not practical to do that, man. So, and then the last thing you want to do is bring Brady in, and then they have this success, and now Rodgers has to come in and follow Brady. It's already a situation where he's almost doing it now, but he's doing it for a different team. Brady did it in Tampa. Rodgers was trying to do it in New York. The last thing you want to do is bring a guy like that in. And plus, Brady's skinny now, so he looks like a swimmer. It's just people just talk and just talk and just talk. And I'm just trying to figure out, what would you have done in that situation? Not you, David Harrison, but the people that criticize the Jets. They've actually used resources and traded draft picks to bring in somebody who can play, who just got hurt. That's it. It's a part of football, and it happens.
Yeah. I mean, look, every year we tell teams, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. So that team goes and they go draft a quarterback. And look, let's not, I know a lot of people weren't, in love with Zach Wilson that year, but let's not pretend that, there weren't teams looking to draft him in the top 5, top 10 as well, if the Jets let him slide and all those things. And then, I mean, again, kind of a little bit of a hat tip. They figured out a little, fairly quickly. I mean, maybe not fast enough for some people, but fairly quickly that they needed somebody different. They go and bring the legend, like you said, and you can't scout that someone's Achilles is going to tear on the third play of the game. That's not something that you can do. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so certainly making the effort that most fan bases would ask them to make, and it just hasn't really worked out. But Boyle's going to get his chance here. Tyreek Hill cleared to play. So the Miami Dolphins are going to have their complement of weapons. Raheem Mostert is going to be out there. I think everybody pretty much expects the Miami Dolphins to run away with this one. We will see if Tony thinks that, if I think that, later on in our prediction segment of today's episode. But first, before we get to there, we got to talk about Thanksgiving football. We have 3 games on the docket. A couple of them, one of them was pretty competitive. The other 2 not as competitive, but a lot to talk about from there. And then we'll make our predictions coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, let me let you know about FanDuel, man. Today's sponsor for our show, FanDuel. If you're not on it, I don't know what to tell you, man, other than you need to be, right? You need to score early and often with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. I'm going to repeat that. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's right, any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, look, this is what they have for you. Good spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. I'll repeat it, FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Y'all know FanDuel's official partner of the NFL. They need to be an official partner of yours too. So make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON and take advantage. Get a $5 winning ticket and you get $150.
All right, continuing today's episode of Locked On NFL. Tony Wiggins, David Harrison here with you to talk about what happened on Thanksgiving. But before we do that, I need to let you know Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league, like Locked On NFL. You'll see this on tomorrow's stream if you go over there and check that out. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel every day. We greatly appreciate you for supporting Locked On NFL every single day. And of course, Locked On Jags, Locked On Bucks, Locked On Commanders, Locked On whatever you want. We appreciate you supporting the entire network. A lot of good people on this network, so we appreciate having good people listening and watching the network as well. Wig, the NFL was appreciative of the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions playing to a 29-22 finish, because 7-point spread in the first game of the day certainly sounds like a competitive venture out there on the field. But if I told you that thing was 23-6 by halftime, that changes things just a little bit. So what before we get to like the specific stats, what went wrong for the Detroit Lions?
Turnovers. Jared Goff, the big question you have about that team, even though he's had a bit of a sort of a rebirth to his career since he went to Detroit, is how far can he take them, right? So they're sitting there and they're trying to battle, and they're one game behind Philadelphia at the start of the day for possible home field. And Philly has a tough slate down the stretch. And guess what? They laid an egg, man. Jared Goff was uncharacteristic in his turnovers. He's now turned the ball over, I believe, 6 times in the last 2 games. Green Bay jumped out, got a lot of confidence. And then in the second half, when Detroit tried to do what Detroit does, and that is win behind their offensive line, it worked with the first drive of the second half. But then Green Bay's pretty talented in their front 7. They said, no, we're going to do our thing. And Jordan Love, we just talked about developmental quarterbacks. Let me tell you something. I'm convinced after watching him today, and I know a lot of other people probably saw it too, Green Bay has their quarterback. There's no doubt in my mind with the way he played today. It is not an accident against that team. So that's the thing that bothered me. And they wasted too many times when they were in scoring opportunities, and they didn't take the field goals. And they ran some plays that are a bit head scratchers. This is the second year in a row that on Thanksgiving they did something that you're like, why are they doing that? But Dan Campbell is going to play that way. He's going to coach that way, and that's who they are as a franchise. But I'm pretty sure there are some points that they left on the field, and you're not going to beat anybody turning the ball over like that.
Yeah, you already kind of mentioned it, right? But Jared Goff, 3 interceptions last week, 3 fumbles this week. I mean,
Unreal.
that is incredible. And Tony, I'll tell you, my first appearance on Locked On NFL Friday this season was following a Detroit Lions Thursday night football game, and I made a comment on that episode that the Detroit Lions were only going to go as far as Jared Goff would take them, and it's not going to be very far. They need to find a better quarterback. And he kind of made me eat my words a little bit throughout the season. But these last 2 weeks, he's starting to prove me right. And I would rather see Jared Goff continue to prove me wrong, because I'm all about human beings reaching their full potential, right? So the Detroit Lions certainly want to see him get on a better page. They want to see everybody else get on a better page. David Montgomery had kind of a bumpy day, so to speak, had a couple of bumps and bruises that he took on. Jahmyr Gibbs, I was more invested in him than some people because he's on my fantasy roster. Speaking of my fantasy roster, though, Christian Watson, 5 catches, 94 yards. So full disclosure, I had to go to AT&T Stadium to get ready for the Commanders-Cowboys game. I got to watch the first half of this game. Didn't get to watch the second half of this game. Turns out that I already saw the game-winning score anyway, even though I didn't get to watch the entire second half. But Christian Watson, I mean, right out the gates, Wig, the Green Bay Packers going downfield, taking shots. He finishes with 94 yards receiving and a touchdown. Jordan Love, like you talked about, 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I want to know, you already gave your statement on it, which is great. So I'm just going to say, like, people love Jordan Love when he was coming out of college, when he was getting drafted. There were a lot of franchises, fan bases, and media members that wanted him drafted by NFL. I remember the Buccaneers. I covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We wanted the Buccaneers to draft Jordan Love, and then he sits behind Aaron Rodgers, and he gets older and a little bit wiser, gets some NFL coaching, and all of a sudden people are like, that the dude's trash, and it's just crazy. So I'm glad that Jordan Love is starting to prove people wrong. So, good game for the Green Bay Packers. The Detroit Lions, I think, eventually I think they're going to be fine. I think a lot of the things that are going on with them are certainly fixable. The Lions now sit at 8-3. The Green Bay Packers are sitting at 5-6. And then we go to the second game of Thanksgiving, and that is the game that I had the fortunate opportunity to sit through and cover. The Washington Commanders get whooped 45-10 by the Dallas Cowboys. But Wig, I will tell you this: I had the fortunate. I've called myself fortunate because I'll tell you what, Jerry Jones. I sent some pictures in the group DM, the NFL channel DM. So you saw them. Jerry Jones does Thanksgiving right. If y'all ever get an opportunity to cover a game in AT&T Stadium on Thanksgiving, take advantage of that, because Jerry Jones, he gave me the highlight of my day in the form of like 4 or 5 plates worth of food that I ate way too much of. But the Dallas Cowboys come away 45-10. Wig, what was your big takeaway from that game?
Well, the takeaway is it's a statement game. And in front of the nation, after so much talk about Dak Prescott and about the receivers that they didn't have opposite CeeDee Lamb, well, now you get Brandon Cooks playing well, right? And then you get Turpentine. He even caught a touchdown pass. And Jalen Tolbert even got involved. Yep. And then when you look up, CeeDee Lamb got going late. They're throwing to the tight ends. Tony Pollard is running the way he ran before. Their offensive line blocked. They rushed the passer very well. Young Mr. Bland, who wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the year, actually got another pick 6, and now he broke the pick 6 record for a season. It's 5. Everything that could go right for them went right. Now, that game was a little closer than that score indicates early. But what happened is once Washington got desperate, and by the way, they might have the worst offensive line in football. I might, I'll let you're the expert on them, but the Cowboys absolutely punished them in the second half. Dak Prescott looked like he was a top 5 quarterback. The key to them moving forward, though, because their schedule is going to dictate how they finish. They still play Philly again. Can they beat Philly or San Francisco? It's going to come down to that for them. They got to be able to beat Philly or San Francisco, and they're not out of the realm of possibility that they get the number 1 seed, because they're a game behind Philly, and Philly has a heater of a schedule, especially over the next 3 weeks. And one of those games is the Cowboys. So all it did was it showed you that Washington's probably going to move on from their coach, and they really need to fix their offensive line. And it also makes you wonder, why the hell did they trade all their pass rushers? They couldn't get anywhere near Dak. So that's what it did for me today. Dak Prescott kind of quiet the critics down for at least another week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a lot to say about this game, but I'm going to let you guys go check that out at Locked On Commanders. I got plenty to say. Tony Wiggins said everything. Everything you said is accurate, and then I got a little bit more to talk about from the Commanders angle of things. And of course, Locked On Cowboys is doing their thing over there. Final game of Thanksgiving, 31-13. San Francisco 49ers winners over the Seattle Seahawks. So we kind of have a hodgepodge of games. We got a game that looks closer than it actually was. We got a game that was closer than it looked, and then this one is pretty much delivers on what it looks like. Christian McCaffrey, 114 yards on the ground. Deebo Samuel, 79 yards through the air. Brock Purdy, only 9 incompletions, 209 yards total. Did throw an interception. That's one of the completions. But 3 weeks ago, people were talking about maybe the Niners go after a quarterback this offseason. And now I think people are back to believing that the Niners are arguably the best team in the National Football League. So Thanksgiving brought a lot of entertainment, but we got plenty of entertaining games coming up the rest of the way. Tony and I are going to tell you who's going to win all of those games right now on Locked On NFL.
Today's sponsor is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the sponsor for today's show. And let me tell you something, man. Therapy is real. I'm going through a situation right now where my wife needs some therapy. We're trying to deal with grief management and trying to get her the tools to help with the loss of her loving sister and my sister-in-law. So I'm speaking to this, and I'm speaking about this from some pertinent experience here. If you need therapy, man, there's no better place for you to go than BetterHelp. It's there. It's there for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. That's right, no additional charge. So visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. You ain't got to be by yourself, man. You just need to figure out how to get the tools to help you get through tough situations, and BetterHelp is the place. So make sure you go to BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month.
All right, guys, we're wrapping up this Friday episode of Locked On NFL. And Wig, we're going to start off with Black Friday, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets. We talked about it in the opening segment. Dolphins are favored by 9.5. I'm going that direction, and I'm taking the points. What are you doing?
I'm going that direction. I'm going to take the points, too. I think Miami is going to – the Jets will play spirited because their defense, but Miami's going to pull away.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we turn to Sunday. So Saturday, you can all watch Ohio State, Michigan, because that's the only game that anybody should be watching on Saturday, and nobody's going to tell me any different. But then we got the New England Patriots at the New York Giants. Rough one, right? But someone's going to come out of this thing with a win. You think Patriots are favored by 3.5 points. I'm going to go Patriots on this. Wig, where are you going to go on this?
I'm going with the Giants. And the only reason I'm going with the Giants is because I don't trust Mac Jones, and I think the Giants defense has played really well, including Kayvon Thibodeau, who is having a monster season. Boy, people were wrong about what he was going to do when he got to the NFL and how he was going to respond to get money. But I just think Brian Daboll is kind of on to something. I don't think they have their quarterback right now with Tommy DeVito. But what I do believe is they have more confidence in him than the team had in Daniel Jones. So I think the Giants are going to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, I buy it. If you have 2 question marks at quarterback, better defense usually comes out on top. So that's certainly that logic certainly pans out there. Pittsburgh Steelers visiting the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 teams that need to definitely get some good vibes going. I think the Steelers get this one. Wig, they're favored by 1.5.
I'm gonna go with Pittsburgh too. Cincinnati's a better team, but they don't have their dog. They don't have Joe Burrow back there, so we don't know if they'll be able to use those wide receivers. Maybe Lou Amarula lines them up and forces Kenny Pickett to make some mistakes. But maybe Pittsburgh is a little bit, since they switched offensive coordinators, maybe this rejuvenates them, and I think they do just enough to win that game.
All right, Carolina Panthers are 3.5 point underdogs on the road against the Tennessee Titans. This is another one of those matchups that are kind of but I think I am going to take the home Titans to win this one.
I'm going to go differently. I'm going to go with Carolina. And I know that's hard to do. And I saw something the other day say this might be a one and done for Frank Reich. I don't know if that's the case, but I don't like either team right now. But I do think if I put all the players in one bag and I had to pull 10 guys out, the best 10, I think 6 of them probably play for Carolina. So that's where I'll go with Carolina.
All right. Then the game you're going to be covering, Jacksonville Jaguars on the road to visit the Houston Texans. preseason, I mean, you're probably looking at the Jags having like a 10.5 point spread on this thing, but now we're in season, and because of what the Houston Texans and their rookie quarterback have been doing, the Jacksonville Jaguars only 1.5 point favorites. Wig, who's going to win this game?
Jacksonville's going to win. Trevor's 1-4 against them, and he mentioned it just the other day. I think they're close. I think Houston's really, really close, but this is the CJ Stroud versus Trevor Lawrence game, and I think this is a game where Jacksonville's getting a little healthy. I think it's going to be very, very competitive. Houston's not quite ready yet. I think Jacksonville's a year ahead of them in their rebuild and in the development. I think the Jaguars are going to win it.
All righty, there you go. New Orleans Saints 1.5 point favorites on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Two good defensive teams. It's really going to boil down to probably quarterback play. The New Orleans Saints arguably have better quarterback play. Michael Thomas, the wide receiver, going on injured reserve. They still got Chris Olave. Do the Saints have enough to make this thing happen?
Yeah, because the Saints know who to get the ball to. It's going to be Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, right? And they still do have great players at every level on their defense. So therefore, I'm going with the Saints. I don't know what Atlanta's up to. They got Bijan Robinson, and they act like they don't have him. So I guess Algier or whatever his name is, they consider him better. I don't know why Bijan isn't playing, but or isn't getting the ball more. So I'm going to go with New Orleans.
Curious coaching things happening in Atlanta. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers visit the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts are 2.5 point favorites. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a lot of injuries they're dealing with. But Wig, I want to drop a little bit of anecdotal information that may not be anecdotal, courtesy of James Yarko of Locked On Bucs. James Yarko will be at Lucas Oil Stadium for this game. He has never in person covered a Buccaneers win. However, James Yarko also points out that the Cincinnati Bengals, for some reason, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers never win on the same weekend. They also never lose on the same weekend. So if you go Steelers over the Bengals, that logic would say the Bucs are going to win, but James Yarko's in stadium. So one of these two curses may be about to break. Either that or the Bengals are about to pull off an upset. Wig, given all of that factual information and analysis, what do you think happens in this one?
I think Yarko has a lot of time on his hands, right, to be coming up with all of that kind of stuff. But I'm going to go with Tampa. I just think Tampa, once again, even though I do like certain aspects of the Colts roster, Gardner Minshew to me, man, it's cool. He's a nice little story, but the one criticism I have of him is that he plays real loosey-goosey sometimes, man, with the scrambling, and then he has to throw anticipatory throws because he doesn't have a bunch of mustard on his balls, and I think that'll hurt him against Tampa. So I'm going with Tampa.
All righty, Los Angeles Rams 1.5 point road favorites against the Arizona Cardinals. Can Kyler kick that spread, Wig, or are the Rams going to get this thing done?
I'm going with Arizona. I think they play hard. They've been playing hard, overachieving all year, but still losing. But now that they have Kyler Murray back, I think that talent level at that position gives them a little bit of a boost. And I'm going with Arizona in an upset.
All right. Cleveland Browns are visiting the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are 1.5 point favorites. Arguably, they got the better quarterback situation. Maybe a young guy in Cleveland trying to make his name, and then two defenses. I think the Cleveland Browns are the better there. Who do you think comes out on top?
Denver, and that you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, even without Deshaun Watson, I would have said Cleveland. But I'm going with Denver. I think Russ is starting to feel like himself again, and I do think Sean Payton has really shown us why he was considered a really, really good coach before he got that job. I think we forgot how good he was.
Yeah, that Russell Wilson-Sean Payton connection is starting to make some moves, so we'll see what happens there. Kansas City Chiefs needing a win, coming off that loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. They need to get a good taste back in their mouth. They're 8.5 point road favorites against the Raiders. Can the Raiders keep the Kansas City Chiefs from getting a win this weekend?
No, Kansas City had their bump in the road when they went and lost to Denver, and I think they really, really need to make sure that they keep that little bit of room and separation between them and everybody that's behind them. So Kansas City goes in and handles business.
Yeah, I definitely don't want 3 losses in a row with a bye, kind of dividing those things up. The Buffalo Bills, 3-point underdogs to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles feeling good coming off a win over the Chiefs. Is this a letdown game for the Eagles, Wig?
It could be, because look, I'm gonna tell you right now, they got Buffalo this week, they got the 49ers next week, and then they got Dallas the week after that on the road. That's that tough stretch that I was talking about. But I think they win tomorrow, and then hopefully they're not looking ahead to the 49ers, but I think they go ahead and pull the game off tomorrow.
Yeah, imagine the
What's
Buffalo
Monday?
Bills being a trap game for the Philadelphia Eagles because they're looking
Right.
ahead of the 49ers. And what a rough road to haul there. Baltimore Ravens, 3.5-point favorites against the Chargers. I think I got to go Ravens wig. Am I wrong or am I right?
No, you're right. Baltimore's going to win the game, and we're going to be on Brendan Staley watch again, but Baltimore should pull it off.
All right, that's Sunday Night Football. And then Monday Night Football, Black and Blue Division, NFC North Classic, Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings. The case of quarterbacks that nobody wanted, nobody believed in. One of them is winning. One of them has won a little bit and kind of did better, but not fully there yet. Who gets the win here, the Bears or the Vikings?
I think the Bears are in shambles. They need to get to the off seasons because they do have some nice parts. Minnesota, though, has really found a way to pull these games off. They're playing well. They're all, rallying with the young quarterback. Well, not so young, but Josh Dobbs. So I think they're going to pull the game off because of their defense. Look for Daniil Hunter to be a real big impact on that game.
There you go. Yeah, I like the Vikings there as well. I agree with you. The Bears have some nice parts. They need to get to the offseason without any year-long injuries or any midseason return guys, anything like that, and then use that draft capital, use some cap space maybe to bring some guys in. But I do think the Vikings get the win on Monday Night Football. That wraps up Week 12. Coming up on Friday, we've got Locked On NFL live at 2 p.m. Eastern, and then you've got Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens coming back for a whole new episode of Locked On NFL on Monday. So make sure you're subscribed, turn on the notifications, turn on the auto downloads. For your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Jags, Locked On Commanders, Locked On Bucks, and don't forget to go to Locked On Sports, first ever 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week sports stream. I love it because I'm up at like 2 a.m. and there's nothing but like old Super Bowls on, but I want recent news, so I turn on the Locked On Sports stream and I watch my battle buddies, my partners here on the Locked On NFL network, or Locked On network, just not just Locked On NFL, but the Locked On network, doing their thing. So we always thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison. We will see you right back here next Friday for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.